I have a pretty long commute today, so I'm going to go through how water cures spiritual blindness. And so in this video, we'll go through how to obtain perfect meditation / silence, how to learn how to see reality clearly, like how to see reality in a non-delusional way. It should go over all metaphysics, so like everything about life and death, the incarnation, like how the soul works. All of that stuff becomes extremely obvious when you realize that water is awareness, or water is consciousness. And so if you want to, so the first thing that you do when you understand that water is consciousness is that you look at water and you go, okay, this water is the nature of my consciousness. And so you look at the properties of water and you can be like, okay, this is how my consciousness behaves. This is how my consciousness moves. Right? The water is the body of your consciousness. You could say that consciousness has some je ne sais quoi, right? Just like you have some je ne sais quoi, but your body, like you go, oh, what am I? I'm right here. There's a certain immediacy, there's a certain reflection of what you actually are, even if what you are is invisible. And so consciousness is like that in an abstract, just like you're specifically a body, consciousness is specifically water. And so what do I mean by consciousness? That's the awareness, that's the looking. That's the eye. That looking, that awareness can perceive anything in the water. Except, so if you look at water, you go, okay, what's going on? Well, there's actually nothing ever in the water. If something's in the water, it distorts the surface of the water, up to and including creating completely isolated bubble. So like when you put, unless it dissolves, right? Anything that's not dissolved in water is at the surface of water. Nothing enters into water without being totally dissolved by it and just vanishing. Outside of that, outside of something like dissolving and vanishing, you only get surface phenomena. And so in water or in consciousness, the only thing that you can see is the surface of the consciousness, just like the only thing in the water that you can see is the surface, is the waves. Even when you're all the way in water, all the way underwater, surrounded by water, it's still a bubble, and then there's surface. It's just surface. It's just surface underneath or inside of another surface. And so that's the different, like when people are looking for their consciousness or looking to unify with their consciousness or something like that, there'll be practices that tend to take you into consciousness. But you don't dissolve. Like going into consciousness does not cause the dissolving. And so so you use water to understand. There's all these different phenomena people have noticed about consciousness. People have noticed about spiritual practices. People have noticed about learning the nature of themselves, right? People do spiritual practices and meditation. Why? Because you're trying to learn about the nature of yourself. So you observe these things. You can observe all these things and figure out the nature of and not realize that you're looking at water. And so to understand that pattern, so where you have a spiritual practice, you go deep. You might go deep, but you don't accomplish the thing of somebody who has dissolved in water and become water. It's just you go, oh, I go deep into it, I'm going to go deep into it, and what have you done? You've recreated surface in the water. And that having the surface underwater or in water is also what is called, prelest spiritual pride. where like you think you've become something because of your depth and your location in water, because of your depth and the location of the Supreme. And so that's interesting. You know, you can read that anywhere, learn it anyway, like people learn it. But you can look at water and see structurally why that's true. So there's all sorts of different spiritual truths, and there's all sorts of different insights that people have had about the nature of consciousness. And you go, well, why is it that way? You can look at water and you go, okay, that's why it's that way. It couldn't be any other way, right? And consciousness couldn't be any other way and still support life. And it's the same thing with water. Water, like the behavior of water, which is ultimately like the behavior of ether, which is the behavior of all the kind of electricity and essence and energy surrounding all the atoms and all that. If it had any other properties of this stuff, it wouldn't work. Like, this pattern is the foundation of all being, just like water is the foundation of all life, with anything even remotely resembling human awareness. And it's these bodies of water in this that have constructed sort of like a fractal tube network of a body, be it a human being or a squirrel or even grass, right? That's water is having that experience. And then water is miscible. It's the water in you is the same as the water in me. It's the same consciousness. It's the same I. But for the time that it is a body, right? A body can take in water from the outside all the time, and that water instantly turns into it. But a body of water cannot really instantly turn into all the other water. So these experiences that people have isolated inside of these water bags where they don't really connect, this is like my body water is cut off from the ocean over there, even though it's the same thing, it's the same substance, it's the same I. This gives like an incarnational experience. That's how something as non-dimensional as a soul, or non-dimensional as awareness, or non-dimensional as consciousness, that's how it takes on physical form. And so the experience that physical form has is very much determined by the DNA in the body and where the body is, the situation of the body, all these things that people say is me, right? But people find that, like, just observe it and you'll go, I'm not any of that stuff. I'm not any of that stuff. Well, what am I? Okay, I'm pure awareness. Like, so what does that mean? It's water. You have the same relationship to all of this. You have the exact same relationship to the entire world as the water has a relationship to your body. Right? And so when that awareness that you are, the only thing that it has to look at, it can feel itself. So imagine like ocean, right? So your body, because of the electricity and because of the fractal surface area, so the water is very, very thin and in tiny, tiny little bubbles, right? There's just a bunch of tiny little bubbles that are called cells, and then there's bags, organs, or different bags, different layers. These are, that's all adding surface area to the body of water, and then it's also adding like compartments. So you have water in your body that's like separated into different compartments, and it's not exactly connected. So it's a multitude of experiences, but all that water in your body is constantly mixing and it's constantly touching. And it's constantly kind of having this same unified experience because of just everything's wet, so everything's in sort of this electrical contact. Anything that's within electrical contact of current can flow or energy can flow, it's in a single body of water. A field, a fluid, a medium, right? So water, in the sense that I'm talking about, it is specifically, boom, right there, there's the ocean. This is the stuff in my body. It's simultaneously that, and and what you could point at as the electrons of the molecules in the air, the electrons on the molecules of my skin, or of my 3-section staff here. The surface of that 3-section staff is the surface of more water. It's water at a different density. It's at such a high density that my body does not sink into it. It floats. It's my hand, my body is so buoyant in relationship to the stick that I can't go into it. But it's still water. It's just water. But imagine like you're trying to go underwater and your hand would be made of like balloons or air. You have to push really hard to go into it. So the body experience is this massive surface area, just massive. That's all the like the body's fractal, and so it just huge amount of surface area. Similar to how your lungs are like have the surface area of like a tennis court or more or something like that. And so the surface area of the water of the body is even more than that. It's huge. And so you have all that surface area, and then on the surface of it is all these different waves. Waves that are the waves of this water of your body are the shape of your body. And then the movement of the metabolism, the movement of stuff through the body, including its water, including consciousness, so the movement of fluid, and then the movement of electrons, whatever, stuff dissolved in the water, right? Things dissolve in the water and they move through the water and then they can pop out in a different location. So something can dissolve in water and then just crystallize into something else in the body, and that's exactly how you build body. Like you eat food and it has to dissolve pretty much in water, and then it can disappear and then reform somewhere else. Some molecules, some things, I don't know if you could call them dissolved. Like, is DNA dissolved? I don't know, maybe. Like bigger proteins, but so you're looking at the surface. Stuff is moving around inside of the water invisibly, things that are dissolved or things that are taken underwater and then are moved by currents in the water. Electricity in water, so the breath and the metabolism is genuinely a type of current, a type of flow, a type of pressure in the water that's moving around. And so the body has all of this, a huge amount, and you would go, well, it's so thin, how could there be any depth to that experience? Because it's just tiny little pockets, right? Just tiny little whatever. It takes this big ocean to be that interesting. And the electricity in the body is causing it's simulating or creating depth in a very, very small space. If there's a tremendous amount of charge, there's a tremendous amount of depth. And so all the different, like all the cells have a big negative charge on the shell, right? Different charge on the inside. And so that charge makes the bag of water in the cell or around the organ or even the whole body, that creates this depth. And so you have this tremendously deep experience in a body, even though if you were to measure it, it's not that deep. So if you don't see all that stuff, when you measure the body, like when you measure consciousness, you would go, this experience is just surface, ephemeral. There's like nothing to it other than like, I'm here. But I don't have any, you look at it and you go, I don't have any depth. Like if you look at it from the sense organs in, there's no depth, there's no freedom, there's no space to move around. It's just surface. Right? So this is another pattern that people get into when they do spiritual stuff. People can turn incredibly nihilistic, psychopathic, from seeing water, of seeing patterns of water and not understanding how to go into it. So you get people that are kind of locked outside of it. And so yeah, unfold the body and stretch out the thing, and you're looking at the body. It's a wave pattern, it's a frequency pattern. Like a bone is just a big old wave in the water. And so this is why people, like, if they shift or they start to feel or experience their consciousness in a different way, they'll start to see the body and reality and everything as vibration, frequency. What does that mean? What is a frequency? It's a wave in a medium, right? So you have to see the body as a medium. And the medium is what's laying down the body. Like the body is the frequency of the medium, but the medium is that which is laying down the body. And so people will try and treat the body, but not change the medium that's creating the body that way. And so this pattern here is something that people have intuited in healthcare. And this is the basis of things like acupuncture and yada yada. And people that are Western, or people that are materialistic, people who, I don't know, they don't pay attention to consciousness, right? You can be in the whole world and not, you could be in the water, and you can pay attention to, you're the water, right? You're the awareness, and you become an expert on the surface, all the objects, all the things. And then there's a whole nother realm of study that's like studying the water, because it's not just the surface. There's all sorts of currents. There's stuff that's invisible happening, and that invisible stuff is most of reality. The same way that the mass of the water in the ocean is most of the ocean. The surface is almost nothing. The surface of the ocean makes up 0.00000000001%. And so a materialist understands that much about the world. They're not wrong about what's happening, because the surface is what's happening. But there's also this whole other thing, and you can't point to it. You could never prove it to somebody. It's so obvious, but you can't. For somebody that thinks that the surface is what is a thing, is what is real, is it has to be that vibration, you can't point to like, well, what about the obviousness of the bulk water, the water itself? Like that, you can't force that step on anybody. And again, so this is a pattern that people have noticed about waking other people up, or about waking up, or becoming conscious, or becoming aware of awareness, is that there's no ability to point to it. But if you use water and you understand that water is consciousness, then you go, oh, that's why this pattern's happening, and that's why it can't be any other way. Can't reference this thing. Except when you get these instances like water, where it condenses itself and makes it an object. And so you see this pattern of like, that's how awareness is, and then that's also the nature of Jesus, Christ, Christianity. Is it's the non-referenceable somehow made itself referenceable in this most mundane way. Like the most mundane archetype, the most mundane story is the greatest story, the most beautiful thing. Just like water is the most mundane everywhere, like you freaking people are using it to wipe their ass in a bidet. Everyone in the whole world prays to water like several times a day. They start to fall apart and just get so agitated if they stop praying. This is the nature of a true spiritual practice. The nature of a true spiritual practice will become identical to the relationship that you have with water. To where it's like, that's all you drink, that's all you eat. You immerse yourself in it so much, you swim in it, you surf it. You have like, that's that pattern. And this is so intuitively known, it's staring everybody in the face, even with the main religion of like when people go, what is ultimate truth that I will die by, right? What's the most ultimate truth that I will stick to and give my life for? And when people ask that thing, the thing that people are willing to die for has something that the only people who are fanatically into dying for the religion is either love, compassion, Christianity, Abrahamic faith sort of thing. Muslims, Christians. Well, the water is that type of person. Christ. And so when it goes, so gun to your head, what's true? They go Christianity, Christ. Okay, well, what did the ultimate teacher say? What did the embodiment of God himself do in terms of like knowing the truth of reality, of having the heavens open to you involves going into water, baptism. And then even in the story of Christ, in the story of what God is, the Trinity, the first time that the Trinity was ever all there to where people experienced or perceived every aspect of the Trinity was while in water. God was in water and the Trinity was revealed to everybody at the baptism of Christ. You're the Father, this is my Son in whom I am well pleased, the Son, the dude in the water, the body right there, and the Holy Spirit, like a dove. It's so obvious. You go, oh wow, God gave us the entire pattern. Like everyone goes, well, why doesn't God tell anybody else? Why is the world the way it is? Oh, God's whatever, and like God created this reality to where you have to drink truth. Like you'll die without it in a couple of days, without drinking in this pattern, without imbibing it, without participating in it, without being cleaned by it. Like all of this information was right there from the very beginning. It's obvious. Like you go, what am I? What am I? Well, just look. Water, you're peeing and crying all the time. You're constantly discharging water. The blood is wet. Where's the core of my being? Everybody knows it's in their heart. Well, okay, what's the heart doing? It's moving water with air in it, right? So it's just the whole pattern is there. All truth, everything is there. And so yeah, if you're interested in how to turn this into like a spiritual practice or a practice of silence, I have videos up on that. And you play with the charge, right? Like the blood is the main charge of the body, right? Like how I said charge is depth. The water, the blood, there's a radically different charge created when you slow down the breathing. And by slowing down the breathing, I mean just change the charge of your blood, right? It's just called desaturating. I've graphed it. If you desaturate the blood, that's shifting the charge of the water, and shifting the charge of the water is changing the depth of the water. So change the charge, change the depth. If you've developed some charge in the blood, you're actually in the water. You're in the water. The bulk water away is silence. So dropping down to that point is silence. Like think of how quiet the actual water is away from the surface. It is quietness embodied. Even when moving. All sounds pass through it. It receives everything without changing it. And then the dissolving part, if you just sit there and be with it, like eventually your mind can start to move exactly like the water, and if that happens, you will dissolve in it. And that dissolving doesn't need to be at a particular depth. And that's being taken up into heaven. And then imagine what that transition process looks like from the perspective of somebody looking like the surface. Like you see something, it's in water, like imagine like a salt crystal or sugar in the cup, and you're looking at it, and like imagine you're at that scale. What does it look like when something dissolves? That's the divine fire. It's not exactly fire, but the same way that something like when something's on fire, it's dissolving into the air. Okay, so the divine fire is when it dissolves into the water. And that's something the water does, and then you're just accepting of it, and that's death, right? It's the same thing as dying. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. That's I can't go any further as a teacher. That's everything. So I guess, yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, I guess that's the end of my videos. We've come to the end. That's nice. I don't have to do this anymore. I said it. I think that was everything.